Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another makeup and horror movie Monday. I hope you're doing very well. So today we're going to be talking about the most iconic horror film ever made. If you couldn't tell by the title and the t-shirt I'm wearing, we're going to talk about The Exorcist today. And I mean, October is almost done, can you believe it? So yeah, I mean, I thought instead of making this the last one, because I think the last one I'm going to do like a collection, like a kind of collective of films. Hint, they're on these. And I thought as a single film, The Exorcist is by far like the most iconic horror movie ever made. When you think of horror, a lot of people would go to The Exorcist because initially it is fucking scary. Pardon my language. But it is for me one of the greatest horror films ever made. It's very psychological, it's very freaky. For me, I don't find it as scary anymore because it's been parried so much and I've seen it too many times for it to freak me out. But there are still scenes that get to me. But as always, we're going to be concentrating on the film, and then while I put on a full face of makeup, the usual shabam. If you haven't seen any of my previous makeup movie Mondays or horror movie Mondays, please check them out. I have a wide selection of films that I talk about, but obviously because it's October and Halloween, I just feel like The Exorcist is the best kind of movie to talk about. So let's get into it. I've already primed, but again, we're just going to go with the foundation. So The Exorcist, oh man. First of all, if you haven't seen this film and you like horror, what are you doing? Literally, what are you doing with your life? It is honestly, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's like the most iconic horror film ever made. So yeah, initially it came out in 1973 and released in 1974, basically. And it was directed by William Friedkin, and he is just an amazing director for me. Even obviously after The Exorcist, he's made some amazing movies, and I believe before The Exorcist he had done French Connection, which is apologies if it's after, but my timeline is terrible, with Gene Hackman, which is one of my favorite kind of Gene Hackman movies ever. It's amazing. And he's also done The Conversation, which has Gene Hackman in it as well. But when it came to The Exorcist, essentially, sorry, just dropping things around me, essentially it's like his first horror film, and I kind of think it's his only horror film. But my god, what a film it is. So yeah, it stars Linda Blair as Reagan, who is the young child in the movie. It stars Ellen Burstyn as well as her mum, and for me, she is just amazing in this. If you've seen Requiem, can't even talk today, Requiem for a Dream, she plays a mum, and I believe she wins an Oscar in that, because for The Exorcist she nominated, I believe, for an Oscar because she's just so damn good in this. And also it stars Max von Sydow, who when I first watched this, I thought that was his age, but when he was in this film, he was super young, and obviously all the prosthetics and everything they did to make him look much older for Merrin is pretty awesome. And it was, well, you show how convincing it really is, because I genuinely thought he was super freaking old in this. And I'm kind of like, because before he died, he obviously did look quite much older, because he was, and I'm just like, how is this guy looking so young forever? But then the magic of prosthetics. But yes, so the book, initially it's a book which is of the same name, and I've read it and it is freaking awesome. If you haven't read the book, if you like reading kind of the novels before the film or however, definitely check out The Exorcist. It is such a great read. Well, it's so much fun to read about a girl being possessed, but genuinely it's amazingly written. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's written by William Peter Blatty, who later on actually directs the third Exorcist movie, which I haven't seen, but I've heard it's very good. The second one, apparently it's pants. I haven't seen it. I've seen a review of it, I kind of want to watch it. It has got Linda Blair in it as well, who is like an older Reagan, but is still kind of haunted by Pazuzu, I guess. But we're just going to concentrate on this one today, obviously. So The Exorcist is essentially about a kind of 12-year-old girl who gets possessed by a demon. That's basically it. But the thing is, when it comes to a movie like this, it's much more kind of broad. So when it starts off, you see Merrin's character. I think he's in Iraq. He's somewhere else, apologies. And he's essentially like an archaeologist who kind of hunts down, you know, architectural things. I'm so good at describing, aren't I? And they kind of come across this kind of tomb, and it has this kind of, sorry, I'm just trying to get my setting powder out without dripping everywhere. Yeah, so they find this kind of statue and it looks pretty freaky. It's quite demon-esque. And he starts having like all these visions kind of around, but then it kind of cuts off with Merrin, and then you get to meet Reagan and her mum, who her mum is an actress, so she's a really well-known actress like in Hollywood, and Reagan, like I mentioned, she's only 12 years old, so she's kind of like homeschooled and she's kind of moved around a lot, and basically you just get to see the relationship between Reagan and her mum, and you see it's a really good relationship, but because the mum is kind of busy with work and she has like dinner parties with her friends around, so you see how kind of important she is. Reagan kind of is at home with, I guess it's her nanny, who kind of looks after her and kind of keeps her busy while her mum's working. And in the basement one day, Reagan finds this Ouija board, and if you don't know what a Ouija board is, it's really freaky. I do not recommend ever doing one. I mean, if I believe in it, if I see it, I believe it. That's how I feel when it comes to kind of like ghosts and exorcisms and stuff like that. But it still freaks me out. Regardless of it being real or not, it still scares the shit out of me. And I remember when I was in school, some girls, because I went to an all-girls secondary school, one of them had bought like a Ouija board in, and I don't know if it was a real one or if it's like not a real one, but as in like a plausible one. But I remember them doing it in our science area because it was a really quiet, dark area, and I was just standing there like, what are you doing? This is not a good idea to do this. But yeah, it was freaky. But so yeah, she kind of does this Ouija board, and she shows her mum, and she ends up talking to someone called Captain Howdy, which freaks me out because every time she mentions his name, and I'm just like, okay, it's really freaky, and just like crazy. And so, you know, weird things start to happen, and then Reagan kind of turns into like a really different person. And remember, she's 12 years old, so she starts kind of doing really weird things. So at one of the parties, like I mentioned, that the mum holds, you know, Reagan's quite young, should be upstairs to bed or whatever, and then she comes downstairs, and to like the announcement of the party, she's just like, I'm gonna die up there, and she wees herself, and obviously that's kind of like the ending of the party, because, you know, she's ruined the mood, she's pissed everywhere. So the mum's kind of like, okay, party's over, let's see what is wrong with my weird daughter now, because she's this normal kind of child, and you wouldn't expect her to just kind of come and piss everywhere. But anyway, things just start to kind of happen, and Reagan just becomes a completely different person. Then the mum kind of takes her to all these doctors, and they think it's all kind of like psychological, like wanting attention, because the dad is kind of like no longer around, and she's just looking for attention, where the mum is just like, no, there's something seriously wrong with her, but I don't know. And after all these tests, they can't really find what's wrong with her. So I'm kind of looking down because I'm looking at the palette I'm using and the color story. I'm just like, what do I do? But anyway, yeah, so the doctor's doing all these kind of experiments. They do this really horrible experiment that gets to me every time, and it's where they get this kind of tube in her throat. And one of the scenes, and I actually thought this was real. When I first watched this, I was like super young and I thought it was real. And the scene where she they do it and the blood starts gushing out, I'm like, okay, that's nasty, and I hope that's not real, because that poor child has to have went through that. Obviously not real, but yeah, so that scene is probably one of the most freakiest scenes ever, but yeah, it's amazing. And so they really can't find out what's wrong with her, because she basically just becomes a different person. And then I believe that when they hypnotize her, she kind of turns again, and then that's when the doctor's kind of like, oh, have you heard of exorcism? And she's like, what? The mum is kind of like, right, so you don't know what's wrong with her, so you're suggesting that she's possessed. And so the mum is kind of like, all right, I don't know what you're on about, but okay, let's see what's happened. So things start to get a bit more kind of freaky, because a scene when the mum kind of walks in to the room and all this shit is just flying about, and then the bed starts levitating and stuff. It's really crazy. The whole kind of there's a documentary about the film. Well, there's quite a few documentaries, but one which is behind the scenes of the film, and they're just kind of showing how they do everything. And the scene where the mum kind of gets thrown backwards, the actress, she actually hurts her back in real life. So when she screams, that's a real horrible scream. And I every time I hear it, I'm just shrieking, because it's such a horrible kind of kind of, I'm not going to do it, but it's a really horrible noise that she kind of goes through. And that's when the mum kind of starts to realise that, okay, there's something happening with my daughter, and it's not normal. So that's when we kind of meet one of the not doctors, what am I talking about? The priest. And then essentially he's going through his own stuff as well, where he is kind of losing faith, and just not wanting to just really kind of be a priest anymore. His mum is really sick, and he's had to put her into a home because he can't look after her, because just she's very old. And then you kind of bring Merrin into it, who's Max von Sydow, and then the whole thing just goes fucking crazy. If I was to be here all day to describe this movie, I would. But essentially it's just, oh my god, it's just really weird to describe the first time I ever watched it. I know I watched this super young, because why am I watching horror films at the age of 8 or 9? But that's just the household I grew up in. My dad is a really big horror film fan, and therefore I love horror films as well. I remember he told me when he went to see this for the first time, because I think when he came out, he must have been maybe my age or something, not my age, but younger at the time. And I think he said he remembers going there and having to leave halfway through to be sick, because it was so fucking crazy, which is pretty cool, because if movies have that effect on people, because I know that it was super crazy when it came out, because there were people literally being sick and having to leave. And again, it kind of became one of those movies where it would be banned for a while, because I remember when I was young, it wasn't really out there to be seen. And I'm kind of just, well, this is before I started watching movies properly, but yeah, it's just one of the most iconic movies ever made. I don't really know well, yeah, that's the basic storyline of it. Again, if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's really a great watch. And there's a really good documentary by Mark Kermode, because this is his favourite film of all time. And so he's done a documentary, I think, oh god, I can't remember what it's called, but it's on one of the DVDs. Well, I own a special edition Blu-ray. I couldn't find it in my collection. I know I have it, it's in there somewhere because I have a shit ton of films. But it's basically, I think it was like a BBC documentary where he talks about the film, and it's just, I like Mark Moe. He's a great kind of journalist. I was gonna say reviewer, but that's not really the word. I'm just gonna have a look which side. Yeah, there we go. So I don't want to put on the wrong side. But yeah, essentially, The Exorcist was nominated for so many types of awards, especially when it comes to the Oscars. I think it was one of the first horror movies to be nominated for Best Film. It didn't win, but it won Best Sound and Best Screenplay, because it initially, obviously, it was adapted from a book. Sorry, I'm trying to be really careful with this look. So yeah, it won Best Sound and Best Screenplay. And like I mentioned, it was written by William Peter Blatty, and he was kind of consult on the film as well. But I remember them saying that he didn't like the film very much. It's kind of like Stephen King not liking The Shining, like when Stanley Kubrick made it. They're both just like amazing, iconic films and stories. Like as books, they're just like amazing. But it just seems to be that the writers do not get on with everything. And I think maybe just because of the way that Friedkin was as a director. But to be honest, he is an amazing director. Like, he has just done the most amazing films, and of course The Exorcist is like the one he's mostly known for. Sorry, I'm just trying to make this like really nice and not mess it up, because talking and doing all this at the same time is pretty bad. But like I mentioned before, there are 2 other movies kind of based around this one. Freaky is not involved in them. I think there's a quote where he's like, he hasn't even seen them because he just doesn't have any interest, especially in number 2, because when it comes to number 3, it's got a lot more acclaim to it, and it's actually directed by William Peter Blatty, and I think it might have been his directorial debut, which is really strange because you don't really see a lot of writers become directors, especially when their first book is kind of like acclaimed but written by someone, like directed by someone else. Actually, I've heard number 3 is really good. I do want to check it out. I haven't seen it, apologies. But one day, hopefully I will, if it comes out on like I'm pretty sure it might be out on like a special edition. I'll have to check it out. What I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly do my lips off camera, because instead of talking the whole shebang, and I'll be right back. Just put the lips on because I just felt it'll be much easier, and I really like this combo. Oh my god, I'm living for it. But anyway, yeah, so The Exorcist, what can I really say about it that other people really haven't kind of spoken about, apart from it just being one of the most iconic movies ever made? And really, when you think about like the top 10 horror movies, this one always comes up number 1. And the reason behind it is because it is so freaking weird and crazy and kind of just, I don't know if the original is the word, but I mean, it's definitely one of the best horror films in my opinion, without it even being like a critically acclaimed movie. But it's just, yeah, I don't know what else to really kind of, how else I can really kind of merit it apart from it just being a fantastic movie that scares the shit out of me, basically. And one of my favorite iconic scenes is when you see the demon, I guess it's Pazuzu, because that's the name of the demon. But one of the best things I like is there's 2 different versions. So there is a kind of like a director's cut where you get to see like the spider crawl and a couple of other things here and there. The spider crawl is really freaky, but I can't unsee the fact that it's someone else. That's one of my only kind of criticisms around the movie. And there's a lot of chatting in between, especially when it comes to like the policeman's investigation. Like sometimes I kind of drift off when his character comes on screen, but you know, you have characters here and there who kind of aren't as strong. Like obviously he's not a main character, so you know, it's good to have these side characters, but sometimes they just don't bring as much to the story. But you know, that's just the way it is. But I'm so glad they haven't remade it yet. I mean, they've done stupid shit, like, you know, they did the exorcism at the beginning about Merrin. I haven't seen it, but I'm not really interested in it at all. And I guess they have, obviously there's made like millions of exorcism type movies, but no one obviously with the name like Reagan and stuff like that. But yeah, if you haven't checked out this movie, please watch it. It will change your life, even for like if you get scared, it's worth it. Everyone deserves a little scare once in a while. But yeah, this is my finished look. I am obsessed with this look. It's one of my favorite looks I've ever done. Thank you so much for watching. If you're here to the end, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I film and upload every time I get a chance to, and especially during October, Halloween, it's the most wonderful time of the year. But thank you so much for watching. As per usual, I leave all my socials down below, so if you want to follow me, say hi, whatever, I'm here for you. But anyway, take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!